putting it in perspective. I've just been for a walk on the beach. It's nighttime here, and I got to look up, and there's a few clouds in the sky, but the moon is a new moon, so the sky is dark, and the stars are profound, are fascinating. That some of them clearly seem to line up and make images is a very strange phenomenon, in my opinion. Because each of those stars is not moving around a central sun, but some of them are way away, and it's only an illusion that they actually line up. But right now, if I look up at Orion, I clearly see a man drawing a bow. And so life can be pretty difficult. Life has been extremely difficult for many people, and personally, I got some major challenges. My mother-in-law just died, and it's an odd one. It's an odd experience. I have very strong spirituality, and in that, death is not seen as a, in inverted commas, bad thing, but rather more like taking off an old tired suit, and then we get to come back. So this is a reincarnation theory. Do I have any evidence on this? No. I've never had any direct experience of some kind of past life or anything like that. But whether that is the case or whether it's not doesn't really matter. You see, there is one absolute guarantee in this life, and that is that I will die, just like my mother-in-law. And at some point, given enough time, I will die. I will no longer be able to come to Facebook and make a live video. I will be dead. And in this death, it's very easy to get attached. It's very easy to say, well, it all matters, it's all so important. And yet when I look to the stars and I see those, that their lifetimes are not measured in millions of years, but rather billions of years. And so in comparison, my 100-year hopeful lifespan is relatively incomparable. We're just a nothing. And so the question must come, well, what is the point of it all? And life is fascinating in this aspect, in the fact that for many people, they will never really get it. They will never really manage to work out how this life works. But what's interesting is that life seems to work, at least to me, on relatively simple principles. That there are things that get done or things that happen, and there are results from that. And then those results can then be used to create further results. And some people will take this and down a negative spiral. If I'm beginning a heroin or a cocaine addiction, then most likely in the beginning there will be a small up, and then slowly but surely my life will decline down until I find myself homeless or in despair. On the other side, perhaps there are things that can be done to look after my body, to look after my spirituality, to look after my family, to look after my business. And if these are done, then they too will lead in results. But instead of going down, they will go up. And that the hard road will become easy. You see, it seems to me that there is a lot of effort, a lot of skills, a lot of learning, a lot of mistakes to get going, to get the momentum going. But once that starts to happen, then it gets a bit easier, or at least the capacity to do things and get results, whether they are failures or whether they are success, becomes easier. There are teams, there's money, there's relationships, there's skill sets that can all be leveraged. And this is why it seems that those that work it out continue to have better and better results. Now, it's not all plain sailing, because one of the traps for those is that as it gets better, the drive and the need for it to be something other than it is goes away. You see, almost all humans are in pain, if not all. Perhaps the Dalai Lama, perhaps Eckhart Tolle, perhaps Krishna Das. These are not people in pain, but perhaps they are. They're embodied, and if they are not in pain right now, perhaps as they get older. Perhaps not. Perhaps there is a method of transcending all of this material reality, but I'm certainly not there yet. But in looking at what works, that there are signs, there are hints, and often those who have worked out what works are kind enough to have their stuff together to write it down and put it in books and give guidance for what they found to work. And unfortunately, until you get to a stage where you can understand what they're gifting, then they are providing pearls before swine. I am a pig to a degree, and while I can see the frameworks, my ability to implement them is still limited. Why? Because I still think it's a great idea that I do everything. I seem to be some kind of massive control freak. And so it's very difficult for me to let go. To trust that people have their own gifts, to be able to do things much better than I can do them. So I'm still learning. I'm still under guidance. But coming back to these books, they may not be called systems. They may be called frameworks. They may be called chapters. They may be called lessons and keys. But each of those chapters, at least in the non-fiction world, typically represents a journey of discovery that they have been on. The easiest to see is a cookbook. You see, each of those recipes represents either one extraordinarily lucky attempt or multiple repetitions of improving a system, also known as a recipe, until that recipe was shown to work. And that if I have the ingredients and I follow the instructions and I'm skilled enough to be able to execute those instructions, then I will get a pretty close approximation to that final dish. We've seen this if you have followed any of the MasterChef series over the last, I think, 10 or 12 years, that they are given these pressure tests, which commonly involve a 2, 3, 4, 5-page recipe to be executed in a short amount of time. They are shown the finished product, and then they're given the recipe and off they go to replicate this. Now, this is the execution of a system, and in executing that system, they are able to get the same or at least very similar results to a master chef. And this is the same in business. This is the same in life. That if you want a better body, then you can look to those that have worked out how to do that. And perhaps you should choose wisely. You can say, well, do I want a really muscular body, or do I want a really flexible body, or do I want a body that will still serve me at 85 and 90 and 92 years old? Or what are those guys doing? What wisdom do they have? You see, they have lived a certain way, and they can pass that down. And for many, many years, all of this wisdom was valued. That, at least in some societies, when an elder spoke, there was a listening to hear the pearls of their distilled wisdom, so that I and you do not have to go through 20 years of mistakes. Now, does this mean that it can all happen overnight? No. Does it mean it will happen in a week or 4 weeks? No. Well, it might, depending on where you are. But should you continue to execute this model